So thank you very much for the coveted spot. Last one before lunch. We'll do our best to keep you guys entertained and engaged despite the hunger. Let's start with quick introductions, and we'll jump right into it. My name's Alex Song, CEO and founder of Proxima AI. We are an audience technology that has created a network of 12,000 e-commerce websites. We have now almost 80 million shopper personas, and we're able to help brands scale more efficiently on Meta, TikTok, Google, Pinterest, Snapchat, all the channels you care about more efficiently while also reducing your CAC. Let's kick it over to Eric for his introduction.
My name is Eric. I've been at Purity Products for 4 years or so, the head of growth. They're a 30-year-old supplement company. Started in TV, radio, and then really scaled into digital and been leading that and been in the space for about 12, 13 years now.
Awesome. Mine on? Oh, there we go. I'm Caleb Madsen. I'm the VP of Growth at Win Brands Group. We're a parent company to a bunch of different brands that we've acquired over the years. Myself started accidentally in marketing. I went to school to become an airline pilot, and as you can tell from me being here, I did not succeed in that endeavor. Ended up dropping out, worked at a company called THG, worked my way up till I was head of performance marketing there, then shifted to B2B, and anyone in B2B can plug their ears, but I found it extremely boring. And so about a year and a half ago, switched back into more of the D2C space and working with brands.
Thank you. Let's start off by first asking, just generally, in the macro view of what you guys see from your seats as growth marketers in really successful large brands, what is the challenges, what's the viewpoint today as you guys are looking towards not only Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but the year ahead?
So costs are increasing. The battle for attention is increasing. The idea of putting an ad out there, getting a click and turning into a sale is becoming much more of a challenge. And it's more about, how do you tell your story effectively? And then once you get them, how do you engineer a pathway and a pass-through to really maximize that first sale value and then set them up for, a longer customer experience so you can maximize LTV. So that's like our main focus.
Yeah. COVID accelerated e-commerce in general, and I think the unfortunate part is basically everything worked during COVID, so you could just throw anything at a wall and suddenly you look like you're the best thing that's ever happened, and then that's kind of stopped now, and so I think everyone's kind of returning back to just having like operational excellence and just making sure that they're being very tactical and strategic about how they're approaching whether it's Black Friday or just general marketing. But I think it's been a very big kind of slap back to reality on what works and what doesn't, because that was a very unique moment in time.
I think for me, what I saw during COVID, and I used to be a brand founder myself. We have a pet brand called Finn that did really well because everyone was adopting dogs during COVID, as we know. We could literally just pile into any channel at that point, and it would work. And I think post-COVID, one of the big things I've seen to be a challenge is really aligning with your operational and finance teams around how you can still generate growth, but of course, do it profitably. I'd love to ask you guys perspective on how do you do this very hard job of grow, and now have the hardest targets compared to the past few years as far as efficiency and profitability.
Sounds like you're ready.
I was going to say therapy, personally. No, I think really it just comes down to really giving each dollar in your marketing budget a reason to be there. I think it's very easy when you're looking over a bunch of different marketing channels to just kind of let it run. And if you don't actually break it down and really have a good plan and understanding like why is your dollar going into X channel, and not even just the channel, but then what audience and how it's actually working, it's tough to see scale in an efficient way. And I think like I mentioned, it's just become more and more important to be very deliberate on what you're doing. It's no longer can you just turn it on and just let it run. I think you have to be much more tuned into exactly day-to-day what's happening.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, like, level of deliberate. You need to know why you're running it, the expectations out of that, and, you know, not only go for, like, the upfront sale, but we're really, really big on LTV and maximizing that LTV, and it all starts at that point of acquisition. So understanding what allowables are, understanding where the attribution is, and being able to map that out and understand, like, if I put X into Facebook, this is what's gonna happen, you know, on store. This is what's gonna happen in Amazon. This is what's gonna happen when people call in, because it's a maze of a journey, and just being able to wrangle that and understand that and forecast that out, so you know where your dollar's going to a pretty good extent, so that when you scale into that ambiguity, you know that the numbers are going to back out for the most part.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that's whether it's good or bad. I think that the scariest thing as a marketer is when the unknown happens. Like, you should know pretty closely whether something's going to work or not, and if it's not working, you should know why. And I think that's the key. And I think as marketers, the joke that I always say is, as marketers, everything works, but that's just because we don't talk about the 90% that doesn't. And I think that's the key. Is if you have a good plan, you should also understand very quickly, or understand beforehand, like, why it's going to not deliver exactly what said finance team is wanting or needing out of their P&L. And I think that's where, as marketers, that deliberate plan can just help you be able to forecast that and understand why, and be able to preemptively be able to highlight those issues or upside potential.
Yeah, so that was a very great point. With the operational excellence, like, there's much more focus and much more, like, deliberate discussion and planning around creative and the messaging and the audiences and that sort of stuff, and then a postmortem of why it worked, why it didn't work, how can you iterate on it, how can you build new concepts off that, because, you know, back in the day, it could just be stack a bunch of lookalike audiences, throw a testimonial, and, you know, the money's there. And now it's much more nuanced, much more granular and specific to your pockets of people, and you need to be really, really deliberate about going into it, and then as it's running and as it ends, understand why it worked, why it didn't work, so you don't make those mistakes again, or you capitalize on, you know, what worked.
You had mentioned, Caleb, that 90% of things often don't work. What's the testing framework that you guys adhere to really maximize as much success as possible? Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, I always try to make sure there's budget set aside for it, because then when that doesn't work, no one's coming after me for it not working. And I think that's the key to it, is just, like, understanding it as a test, and wherever possible, trying to have that, like, budget set aside. Although it's not like a testing framework, it's just like the ground rules of needing that set up. And then I think from there, it's really understanding, like, when you're going to hit statistical significance. That's a tough one to say on a mic. But it's just understanding when you're going to hit that, and understanding what the end objective is. So, like, recently we just did a bunch of testing around, like, discount strategy and price points on one of our brands, and that was something where we knew we wanted to get this done. And I think one of the other panels mentioned, like, you don't want to be testing in Q4, ramping up into that. And so we were very quick and just, like, rapid fire testing these things, because now we have 100% confidence in knowing exactly what works and why it works. And again, it comes back to just being deliberate with it and having it in the plan and understanding how it's going to, like, the upside, but also, like, if this just completely fails, we're still going to be okay. And that really is what sets up a good test, because then the expectation is upside and excitement versus it failed, oh my gosh, what do we do?
Makes sense.
Yeah, you definitely need to have a bucket reserved purely for testing, and understanding, and, like, what we do is in the testing stuff is a mix of iterative and then, like, moonshot type stuff, because the iterative will get you some incremental spend. That moonshot type stuff is what's going to really allow you to get that vertical scale when it hits, but it does not hit often. So when you segment that and sequester that spend, and it all goes to shit, you don't have the CFO yelling at you, because it's been understood that it's probably going to happen that way. And then in terms of, like, a framework for creatives and stuff like that, we like to segment everything to get a bit granular, in just ABOs to have a lot of control, understand which messages, which angles hit, move that into a scaling situation, and then repeat the process. So we like to just have a lot of control in our testing stuff, like so we can control all the variables, understand what works. We usually start with copy, then we move to creatives, and then just continue that machine. It's all about, you know, getting that momentum rolling so that you can have a massive machine that's churning out that stuff continuously. Because once you hit higher spend, the fatigue hits in quicker, and the testing has to accelerate, and you just have to keep feeding it if you want to scale.
One of the things I've seen in both your companies, just as you guys have grown and taken on more products, more brands, it gets very hard in terms of focusing efforts and energy, right? If you're trying to make everything important, then by definition, nothing is. I'm curious how you guys do that with, you know, especially for you at a holding company with multiple brands, but also for you who's constantly developing new products that are being put out there into your distribution. Would love to hear some ways for especially, you know, under-resourced, often early-stage teams to stay focused, stay disciplined. How do you prioritize? How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, I think for me, I call myself lazy efficient, where I just try to do things as like easily as possible, but the most efficient way possible. And I think one of the things, we talked about Black Friday a lot today, but I think with Black Friday, one of the things that I like to do is keep the offer and what we're doing as consistent as possible. So we're gonna start about a week and a half, 2 weeks before Black Friday, depending on one of our brands. And we're gonna run the same offer all the way through and run that past Cyber. And we're extending Cyber Monday on all of our brands. And reasoning behind that is then we can scale our ads running into Black Friday. And one of the issues that we've seen on some of the brands we've acquired is they would change offers constantly. They try to gamify it, make it fun, which I can understand the reasoning behind it, but from a growth marketing standpoint, you have to reset your ads to new creative each time you're doing that. New offers means you have to change everything on the site. And so for us, we've realized that being able to have Facebook ads, as an example, run for 2-3 weeks straight with just being able to ramp up, stay ramped up. There's no, okay, shoot, we have to turn it off because the offer changes on Cyber Monday, then ramp back up into it and take those learning phases. Like, we're just going to run all the way through, and it performs better for us when we do that. Like, that's what we've been doing for all of our events this year, and we've seen really good performance from that. But secondly, it just also means that at 12 o'clock on the Sunday, we're not trying to switch out offers or, oh, this didn't work. It's just, we can just run it through. And so for just the ease of employees and people, it's better that way. But then also just from the algorithms, it's just, you can use 2 weeks of data ramping up into it, and you don't have that whole reset moment that a lot of brands run into.
I too am lazy. So what we tend to do is we keep the same offer. So we have all sorts of ads running, but like offer specific stuff, it's always the same offer. At times we'll just attach a seasonality to it. If something's running really well, like we had a Christmas ad that ran into the beginning of March, to the point where people were emailing us. I was getting internal emails like, why the hell are you guys doing this? And I'm like, just look at the CPA and just stop, it's okay. So people thought they got like a backdoor access, that we were asleep at the wheel and they were just jumping on it. So like those sorts of like fun psychological triggers pop up when you do things like that. But we like to keep the offers uniform, attach seasonality to it, and just keep it really, really simple. In terms of like how to prioritize, we've got a 200 SKU store. If you ask the founder, all of them are hero products. All of them are $100 million products just waiting. And if given the opportunity, all of those would be launched. So what we try to do is like look at the product library, break it down by category, and understand like what are high impact categories that historically have high LTV for us on the back end, because we also have the luxury of running like TV and radio and stuff like that. So we have a lot of data. So it's like, okay, let's break it down by category, and then let's choose a SKU that's more apt for a social atmosphere. Is it demonstrable? Does it have an easy to like understand problem solution type construct? Is it something you can instantly understand? And we get them into the world, they love the product, and then they ascend, they buy more of it, they subscribe, or they open up the catalog to them. So like the key there is just understanding like it's interruption marketing. They have a fraction of a second. They don't want to hear from us. How can we grab their attention and then keep them? So that's really how we try to prioritize when we push paid stuff into the ecosystem.
I'm just going to add to that, the not turning off that ad till March is like, this one of my biggest pet peeves is when things are working really well and people are like, well, let's change it. And you're like, why?
Yeah, no.
Why would we change it? And so like I had an ad similar, it was a retargeting ad that ran for 2 years. And every quarter, the creative team would be like, this isn't really on brand, so we're going to try to change it. I'm like, okay, well, A/B test your creative versus it. Because I made the ad in Canva, and they really didn't like it. And it just, no one could beat it. And it's just like, until you can beat it, we're going to leave it on. And they didn't like me for it, but there was no way. It was performing so much better that sometimes it's okay just to leave things and to let it run, and it's okay to not have things constantly changing. So just to add to that, I think it's a great point. Like if you're seeing good performance, why mess with a good thing?
Yeah, don't touch the machine if the machine's treating you well. It's not necessary. And then, like you said, that battle between, it's not on brand. Like I don't care about brand if it's working. To me, authenticity, telling a story, and something that grabs attention, that's going to make your money, and then you get people into your ecosystem. That's your time to build your brand. That's the time to advocate on the back end, have a great customer experience, have great customer support, and all that stuff. But on the acquisition side, you should really, unless you're like a luxury brand, you should really be thinking about the platform itself, how people interact with that platform, and what you need to do to get them into your world, because they truly don't care about your story until after the fact. And I think when we pivoted from very branded pharmaceutical-looking stuff to things that look like, my nephew made half drunk, like the performance went through the roof, and it's something you can't argue.
Give that nephew a design job, huh?
Yeah.
I think we're being very tactical, which is good because I see a lot of note-taking. I want to ask this prompt, which is, what's a strategy or tactic that you can share with this audience that your CEO might be a little bit annoyed that you spoke about today?
If you're in the subscription space, like where subscription's like a big thing of yours, we've found that instead of discounting the subscription, like you obviously have your normal spread between buy one, subscribe and save, instead of trying to give extra on that, packaging it with a low cost of goods product that has very nice packaging that you assign a value to. Not only are you looking at a lower CPA, higher conversion rate, the stick rate on that is massive, and it's a very easy transition to get another person onto subscription with that free gift. So that has been like a real game changer. And then the other thing that we've been doing is, I come from, like, prior to e-commerce type stuff, I was a very heavy direct response, like greasy affiliate marketing stuff, like where every dollar counted, like you needed to make sure that the game was playing or the machine died. So what we've been doing is really taking, like, it's expensive to get a customer, you don't know, like that, the attribution's a mess, but when you have them, it's like, how can you get the most out of them in a respectful way? So what we've been doing is taking very direct response funnels and just implementing them and installing them into the e-commerce experience. So after someone purchases, instead of getting a thank you page, they get an upsell page, and then they get a downsell page, then they get a cross-sell page, then they get some email follow-up, like that is friendly and on brand, but also getting people to try to buy more, because the name of the game, unless you can absorb that loss for several months, and you need that cash flow, you need to do everything you can at that moment of capturing them to get the most out of them. And the easiest one, if you sell supplements, say they buy 1, 3, or 6, offer them 6 more. About 17% of the people say yes, and that's just easy money right off the top.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that we've been testing that's worked really well is we're doing, like, on the site, it'll be 15% off, but if you go through our email, it's an extra 10% off. that's something that we're doing a lot of now, and it's worked extremely well. And when we talk about like planning out your media plan and how you're going to spend your dollars, one thing that since coming here that I've really pushed and started including is not only just the advertising dollars versus revenue, but also just like the gross margin on our products and things. And so it allows us to play with that margin a bit better because we know that email or SMS is going to be so much cheaper than say Meta is going to be. It allows us to tier the discount where it's a much more incentivized discount, but it's also encouraging the right behavior. I want my customer to know that they're going to get their best deal through email. That's going to be significantly cheaper for me, and for them, it constantly enforces that right behavior that they should be checking their email whenever they want to buy something. And so that's what we've been doing. Seen really good success from that so far.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I got one last question for you guys, and we'll certainly break for lunch as it's smelling really good. What's some great career advice that you can give to some of the people in the audience here? I know a lot of them are in growth marketing, a lot of them are early in D2C, and you guys obviously have built great careers in this field. What's one really great piece of advice we could bestow upon the audience here today?
Test, experiment, measure, don't be afraid to fail, and just approach everything with very, very strong hypothesis and learn from it.
One thing that I only do this with people that know me and that know me well enough to know that I'm joking, but one thing I like to do is if someone asks me a question, I'll say, yeah, sure, I've got a website that can solve that for you, and then I wait 10 minutes and send them a link to Google. And it sounds so simple, but I think a lot of times, like I dropped out of college, I have no actual technical background in marketing. I managed my first team when I was 21 years old at THG. And the amount of times where someone asked me a question, I was like, yeah, sure, give me a minute. I'll get to you in a second. I'm doing something. And I would just turn straight up, go on Reddit or Google and figure it out. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, assisted conversions. Let me teach you that. It's just like, it's the easiest way. Like that story is a true story. And later found out that rumor got spread that I had a master's degree in analytics or something around the company. And someone asked me about it. And I was like, no, I dropped out. I'm 22 years old. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think like, that it's as simple as an answer as that. It's like there's so much resource out there. There's so many people out there who know what they're doing. And honestly, Reddit is incredible because everyone thinks they know everything and they're not nice about it. So you're just going to get very blunt, straightforward answers on there. And so if IT ever looks at my computer, they're going to be like, why is this guy on Reddit so much during work hours? But it's truly because if I have a question, I just go on there and there's 60 people in there yelling at each other trying to find the answer. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in the right spot. Let's get some answers here.
That's awesome. Great time, guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Round of applause, please. Oh, questions from the audience. We got a little more time. I guess food is still getting prepared. We're buying some time, maybe. Please. So just maybe repeat the question for the audience.
Yeah, it was around inventory and how do you like marry the two together. Am I right there? Yeah. I think for me, I started my career as a data analyst on the operations side. So like I did like run rate forecasting, all that for stock. And I found the unfortunate truth, which is if you don't have stock, your ads don't work as well. Surprise everyone. And so like we constantly are having meetings with our ops team and just running through like our forecasting. They always try to as best they can have as much stock as possible within reason. But that's something where I found as a marketer, if I know no one from the ops team, either things are going really good and I don't have to talk to them, which is amazing, or I've got a future potential problem because I'm not communicating things. So having a direct line to them, being able to go, hey, look, we're testing this right now. If it starts to trend upwards, we'll give you a heads up. I think it's important because depending on the product, some of our products can get shipped in a couple weeks, some take months. And so if I'm starting to test something and it's working, they need to know firsthand so they can preemptively go, okay, let's change the forecast here to be able to order in. So the two teams just need to be next to each other constantly. And once you're in a good groove there, then it should just be like a Slack here or there, like FYI, we're seeing a good trend here, just a heads up.
Any other questions? Please.
Yeah. So like obviously there's a little bit of trying to test things out without always, like you were saying, like tweaking with the machine if there's nothing wrong with it?
So we always have a dedicated portion of the budget that's geared just towards that so that it doesn't hurt us if it misses. And it's split into two, like iterations off of what works, and that can be as simple as just changing an overlay or just getting a bit more into it. And then like the moonshot type stuff, what we like to do is not look in our space, we like to look across other industries, see what they're doing and see how we can incorporate it with us. We also like looking at people that are buying traffic in a way that we know that they have to convert. Like affiliate people, like people that run affiliate offers, they're working on thin margin, it's arbitrage. So you looking at what they're doing, you're understanding, okay, if they've been running for several months, they're doing it profitably, what can we take from that creative element, that psychological element, like that sort of stuff, and bring it into our ecosystem to make it fit for us. So that's how we do it. I don't like to look too much at what our space is doing, because if you wind up doing that, you're mirroring them, and you become like just a Me Too type of thing. And we want to stay away from that, because supplements themselves are very commoditized. So it's like, how do you stand out on the creative side? How do you stand out on the messaging side? See what other industries are doing, and see what other like marketers and like low margin arbitrage type situations are doing, where they depend on attention. And that's been very successful for us.
What's a good percentage of your total budget you should have for moonshots?
We have about like 5% of our budget towards that. We have a very, very flexible budget, so there's a lot of space. We can go a little bit higher, but I would say about 5%.
Similar for you?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. One last question? Nothing else? All right, guys, thank you so much. Enjoy lunch.